art of the chart, and share the latest trends, thoughts, and analysis from different minds all in one place. Title of this week for week 9: Confusion in the Markets and the Fed to Decide, referring to the Fed meeting coming up on the 15th and 16th of March. Kicking things off, we've got a video that was shared earlier in the week from Plan B, just giving us updates on some of his favorite charts and metrics. The first of which was the percentage of Bitcoin in profit, just showing the kind of the change in the uptrend and how this kind of has played out historically since 2010, where we've seen the first changes from the darker shades of blue, from under 60% of Bitcoin being in profit, to now the green, the kind of like the green areas of 70 to 80% plus, since the kind of regain in price to the kind of the 23, 24k region. This was also presented in a pair with in a combination with the Bitcoin S&P against the color of the RSI at the moment. So again, just showing how much and how important just kind of the S&P as a proxy for the larger macroeconomic climate is. Also, just against the kind of the overbought and the oversold kind of colorful notations, just showing that there's no change of circumstance here, and so we'll be just keeping an eye on that, because again, when this has historically changed through the tones, it has gone in one direction, signaling the end of a bear market. There was just kind of like a few really good slides that I just wanted to share from Invest Answers, who posted a great video this week. The first of which is, I guess, an interesting one for anybody who's a dollar cost averages into an index fund, say the S&P, versus somebody who's a stock picker. So what was just really interesting about this graph, it was just showing what percentage of the contributions from the S&P index each year came from the top 8 stocks. So showing that the contribution from the top 8 to the S&P was all of this red region, while the other 492 companies presented this portion of the returns. And it's just kind of a testament to, if you're lucky enough to be in those 8 names, you can easily outperform the S&P 500. Obviously, some of these have gone through quite turbulent times and exponential growth, and Nvidia, and Tesla more so recently than others. So it's easier said than done, but nonetheless, there's just kind of more just a more of a message of don't rule out tech yet, just moving forward. An interesting kind of reminder of just maybe to review how history repeats itself, or even potentially rhymes, was just this kind of how this sequence has played out in relation to the 200-day moving average, where there's usually a following of a downward support below the 200-day moving average, and then a kind of retest, and then kind of continuation. And that's kind of been confirmed on the RSI as well since 2017. So interesting, only because that's exactly what we're playing out at the moment. We've had that wick down, and now we're going for the retest, and this is the lower line of support from these lows in between the 2 all-time highs we experienced recently. Interesting enough, if anybody who's been watching kind of like my updates, we've just been talking about how there's so little volume between 25 and 30k that there's a lot of speculation and interest about how quickly we can kind of ripsaw up to that. So it doesn't surprise me. What this kind of graph is just showing is how much interest and action there are in calls for the purchase of contracts of Bitcoin in this price range. So nonetheless, there's a lot of bullish sentiment in the market, behind closed doors, if price can start moving in the right direction. So suggesting it could snowball. Following on from that, we have a video from kind of Marzel, talking about some of the question of whether the lows whether the lows were in, and reviewing kind of Bitcoin and ETH, and he released 2 videos, so we're just going to go through them both. I thought what was just interesting on this one was obviously just highlighting the slightly parabolic nature of the move that we've really seen since mid-December, since those FTX lows. And for anybody looking at, obviously, my own version or take on this is, the Elliott Wave count that kind of correlates. And I guess what's interesting is he's just pointing out the obvious break of this kind of shift of this trend at the moment. But going down to a lower time frame was just interesting to kind of point out this kind of upwards channel that kind of suggested there might have been this kind of break to the downside. But what I like is how there was a kind of a counter again going down. That was on the 8-hour chart and now on the 4. But this is where I think maybe this is not the, as we know, this kind of didn't play out. So I'm just saying, looking at kind of these charts, there's a bit of kind of skepticism. Obviously, this is kind of suggesting there's a question of how much that's going to kind of continue to the downside. But the problem about presenting this kind of falling wedge at the lower time frame is this kind of question of, obviously, that's typically typically kind of suggests a break to the upside. And if anybody who's been keeping an eye on this, we saw the break to the upside, but it was a fake out, and then we saw the absolute implosion of Bitcoin in the Asian market on Friday. That's taken us down to the 22k level at the moment. So let's just be wary of patterns, always look for confluence, and always be wary of a false breakout. Look for that confirmation, because this is exactly what was taking place. This is the exact same chart from his video further in the week, where it all kind of looks all golden, doesn't it? You've got the downward slope, you've got the breakout, there's a questionable kind of confirmation. All right, you've got a monthly level below you, but for me, not enough kind of confluence to really kind of be supporting that, and it's been punished really kind of since. But there was a kind of suggestion on the daily level whether it was going to be this kind of continued action in this channel moving to the upside. But I guess what's interesting, kind of counter to what we've just kind of been looking at on the Bitcoin charts, is obviously how Ethereum is, whereas kind of Bitcoin has beaten resistance and is now kind of testing it as support. Ethereum's still got this kind of a bit of a challenge with this upward channel that it's still trying to negotiate at the moment, even though on the lower, which is something that it's if you look at my own videos, there's kind of a lot suggesting that that's got to pull back at the same time. And I guess what's interesting is just kind of countering all these considerations of Bitcoin and ETH with the total free. Basically a kind of a combination of all altcoins, with the exception of basically all crypto, with Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana kind of just being missed from the mix. And it's just interesting to kind of see from that kind of total perspective how this value is kind of broken out from this sideways triangle and is currently moving in this upward channel. So interesting to see how that kind of continues to play out and what that tells us about, is it altcoin season starting, or is it the other way around? Who's leading who in this instance? And I guess just to kind of conclude, earlier in the week we just had some material just from Jason Casper. I know he's just a big fan of just kind of highlighting the golden pocket on those Fibonacci ratios, just kind of pointing out where those kind of previous levels have brought a lot of attraction and a lot of action in the past, and then kind of looking where we are today on the daily level, how these two golden pockets. I'm not sure essentially. I believe this first one's from this point to this point, and this second one, as shown, is from this point to this point. And it was kind of, I guess, hoping and suggesting that this would be history repeating in itself in the formation of the low. But unfortunately, again, not enough confluence there from what I can see or I remember of this video, because as we know, this broke even further to the downside, so it didn't hold. But I guess what was just kind of interesting is this kind of humble reminder right now of what's just going on in the S&P. As we mentioned just at the opening slide of the video, of how important the S&P is as a proxy for the larger economic climate. And Bitcoin's kind of performance has kind of moved, while it hasn't got a 100% correlation, kind of does move with it. I guess it's interesting and optimistic to kind of see we've got an inverted head and shoulders playing out, beating this general line of resistance that's kind of turned it into support, and that has turned into that's bounced off even more since this was shared earlier in the week. Obviously we're going to want to see a continuation of that, but we've got the big milestone of the Fed meeting in the middle of this month, and we'll see what that does to it. Is it going to send it to test this again? Is it going to fall back within this channel, or are we going to see a kind of a continuation, and is it already priced into the market? So be interesting to see how this kind of plays out over the coming weeks. I guess what was interesting looking just at these final bits was the kind of question, I guess the kind of highlighting of the kind of key support at the kind of 18k level. I think for anybody who's been looking at my videos, also highlighted that golden pocket as a real important support, just because of these cutters do no justice, the amount of volume that's actually sitting there. But it'll be a question, it'll be interesting to see, are we going to get down to these levels? Will we be able to? I know that this has been shown as kind of somewhat history repeating itself, but I think there's a lot more suggesting otherwise in terms of confluence of RSI, Elliott Wave count, and the kind of the lack of volume above this. So for anybody interested in in my own take on that, please check out my weekly update on that. So just as a kind of a very quick recap, we've got the percentage of Bitcoin in profit slowly moving up. Lots of call options between 25 going up to 30k, so suggesting there's a lot of bullish money waiting on the sidelines. There's been, to be fair, some oversights from quite a few people on the recent slump. A lot of people kind of expecting maybe a little bit of a continuation, but this big pullback that we all saw on Friday has caught a lot of people out. And at the moment, we're waiting to see how the inverted head and shoulders on the S&P plays out and how that affects everything. As always, guys, thanks for your likes, your comments, and your subscriptions. And tune in, and we'll be giving an update again next week. Ciao.